I'm Cris with This Gay Life, and today's guests are from GALA. We have Cris Dopher, which is the president, and we also have Paula Moore, who is the vice president, and we'll be talking a little bit about GALA, which is a Gay and Lesbian Alliance, and it's kind of sponsored out of the university. But since they know a lot more about it than I do, I'm going to let them explain a little bit about it. And we'll have some information at the end of the show about some things that are going on with our show, This Gay Life. And so you'll want to stay tuned, and maybe while you're mulling about, maybe pick up a pencil and some paper, because you'll want to write down the address. So for right now, let's get to our guests. I'd like to introduce Cris Dopher.
Hi.
And Paula Moore. And could you tell us a little bit about GALA? Like what's the purpose? And
Sure. The Gay and Lesbian Alliance is an organization that's primarily for students and faculty of SMS, but we also accept students and faculty of other colleges and universities that may not have such an organization. And our mission statement kind of goes along these lines. We have three purposes. One is educational, and that's our primary purpose. And we educate in two ways. We educate ourselves, and we educate the public. We educate ourselves through obtaining speakers, and we've had people come in and talk to us about gay issues. And then we educate the public through doing panels for them, and sometimes flyer campaigns. A second purpose is social. We just like to get together and be friends for each other and party. And a third purpose is emotional. We have a support group for people who are coming out or who are having problems in their life, particularly related to gay issues, which they can come to the support group and explain the problem and perhaps get some feedback from people who have been there, or people who are having similar problems, and get those worked out. And that's about what we do.
that's kind of the mission statement and all that
Mm-hmm.
in a nutshell.
Yeah.
On the education, what exactly, what things, you said something about having speakers come in. Do you have like discussion groups? Do you have?
In the past, we've had a gay playwright who told us about her plays and how to handle the issue of homosexuality in such writing. We've had people from AIDS Project of the Ozarks, because we don't consider ourselves any more informed on that topic than most people, so we try to educate ourselves. And we even had a panel of religious leaders of the community come in and talk to us about their points of view. And that one in particular was quite educational for both sides.
That sounds really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the best ones that we had was when we invited one of our members to bring his mother in. Actually, we did that 2 semesters, and it was just a very emotional meeting. The reaction from the mother was wonderful. I think we were all thinking, wouldn't this be great if it could be like that for everybody? And they were just very supportive meetings. So that sort of went along with the educational and the emotional part that we address in our meetings.
Is that kind of usual for the meetings, or if somebody was to say, well, what can I expect on an average meeting? What's going to happen?
We haven't really ever had an average meeting. I will say that there's organizational business, there always is, and we try to get that taken care of and get on to what's new and fun and interesting and planned, and that varies. Sometimes we don't even have a meeting as such. We go somewhere. One of our meetings, we went down to Victory Mission and helped out for Into the Streets program. And another meeting, we went to a COHAB meeting and found out what they were about. So what happens during our meetings is never really set.
So it's not like a basic thing that you go through a very set schedule or something?
No, not at all.
It sounds pretty exciting.
Yeah.
How did you two get involved with GALA? I mean, what prompted you to get involved with GALA?
Well, shortly after I came out to some of my friends, I felt like I needed to talk to more people who understood what I was going through. And I really didn't know what to expect. I figured that GALA was a huge organization with hundreds of people and they met in a big gym or something. And I was kind of intimidated, but I walked in and it was a small, very informal, very warm group of people. And I've been in, this is my 4th semester, and I've just stuck with it. I've had a wonderful time and I've made some really good friends. So, and the conversations that we have in meetings are some of the most intriguing intellectual conversations that some of us ever have. So.
I originally went to a GALA meeting because it was kind of a dare. A friend came up to me and said, you say you're gay, you advocate gay issues, you try to educate people on your own, you even won a gay and lesbian subboard on the electronic BBS, but you've never been to a meeting. So I went, and I liked it. For the first time in my life, I felt like I actually had a family, and it felt really good. And so I stayed.
When you going to GALA, did that help you in your coming out process, or help you settle matters? Was it, having that kind of emotional?
I think more than anything, it was just nice to be around people that were going through the same thing I was. And by the time I decided to take that step and go to GALA, I pretty much worked a lot of the emotional things out on my own, but it was just nice to have, that moral support. And then through GALA and through the panels that we've done, it's gotten a lot easier for me to talk about my sexuality. And, that's probably the best thing that GALA's done for me, is just to make me feel more empowered, I guess, and to allow me to be able to talk about things on a more open level.
Yeah. It's kind of strange. I think a lot of people, when they first came out, didn't necessarily have the language and didn't have the tools in which to explain to themselves what was going on. And this meeting group seems to seem like that would give you at least something to kick around inside your head emotionally, and to make decisions, to help redefine what you think sexuality is. You said it was like a smaller group. About how many members are in GALA?
Well, we've had meetings that only had 5 people there at times, but we've had meetings that had over 30. I call it a fluctuating membership. Some of our members cannot make the meetings, but they do go to our other activities, such as the parties and the service we sometimes do. So I would have to say probably around 35.
Something on that order.
Yeah.
We were talking about like defining sexuality, and there's a lot of, as I talked to you earlier, as you called labels. And do the labels really have meaning anymore? Are they kind of almost outdated, or how do you feel about the labels that come up, such as gay, bi, or lesbian? Do they still actually fit the mold, or what?
Sometimes only in the strictest sense, but more often than not, they don't ever feel quite right.
Yeah, I think labels still hold value in our society because we're so oriented to placing names on things. You have to categorize everything so that everything fits neatly in some category, so that you'll have some grasp on reality in that way. But I think that anymore, especially in our generation, maybe more people are saying labels are just nonsense, because you can't ever say, well, if you say that you're this today, does that mean that you're going to be the same and label yourself the same 50 years from now? Or in a different situation, how would you feel? I think we're more able to say, well, situations and your environment change, and that doesn't mean that it doesn't necessarily mean that you're always going to be the same. And so labels, I think, have become, if not completely unimportant, at least less important to our generation, maybe.
Yeah, especially as it deals with human sexuality, because sexuality fluctuates to such an extent that saying you're, as a kid, you will probably say you're heterosexual because you never thought about it. At some point, a gay person will realize they're gay and their label changes. And I think part of the uproar in coming out is simply because they're changing a label. But if people would just start to think in terms of a fluctuating sexuality, then it becomes easier to accept people.
I mean, the labels are much more transitory than they used to be.
I think so. I was talking with a young lady last night who believes she might be bisexual, and she has started to tell people this. And I cautioned her against outing herself as a bisexual so soon, because if she's not absolutely sure, then she shouldn't. The label will follow you around the rest of your life. And so I advised her maybe to take the label bi-curious. This lets people know that she's curious, but hey, maybe later on she realizes she's not bi.
Which brings me to another question, and a major difference, at least from my generation to yours, which is a little over 10 years, we won't, is the new language that people use. You talked about a scale. You've also, in our talking, you've talked about bi-curious and other new labels, I guess, that have come up since the time when I grew up. So you want to explain a few of these things that maybe the other generations might not have thought of?
Well, you mentioned the scale. That would be the Kinsey scale. A man named Kinsey did a study many years ago on sexuality, and that's where the 10% figure comes from, which some of our own generation doesn't subscribe to. But he also came up with a scale, and that's less well known. It goes from 0 to 6. A 0.0 is completely heterosexual. 6.0 is completely homosexual. Your sexuality can fall anywhere in there. From 0 to a 6, I am bisexual. That is a label I take, but where I feel I fall on the Kinsey scale would be somewhere around a 3.7 or even a 4.0.
Do you know where you fall on the scale, or do you not like even go to this?
Well, I think that the scale is a good measure, I guess, just to say that almost nobody is either one way or the other exclusively. That, you know, just like I said a little while ago, things change in your life, situations change, and you might decide later on in life in a different situation that if you label yourself a 5 now, you maybe are a 6 later on, or a 4. You know, as far as that scale goes, it's a little bit confusing maybe, but
kind of a whole new meaning to doing the scales.
The Kinsey scale helps us to remember that sexuality changes over time, and that you do not have to be true to a label. The labels have to be true to you. And I think that concept right there is hard to grasp sometimes.
Is it? Because there is a difference in generations, and I mean, a generation, the actual quote-unquote definition will be disputed, I'm sure, because of the number of years. But with media, I mean, we grew up with a whole set of TV shows that gave us basic stereotypes of all different types of people, whereas the stereotypes changed and TV had changed while you were growing up and stuff. Are the stereotypes still the same? Or have they changed? Are they more modified? How are they now, comparatively?
I think they've changed somewhat. The typically held stereotype of a gay person, the type that is especially publicized on TV, simply doesn't apply to most gay and lesbians, and especially not to our generation. We realize we don't have to be flaming in order to be gay. And that's what, got any?
How does that work with, like, lesbians?
Well, obviously lesbians aren't on TV as much as gay men are portrayed. And I think the image that I got of lesbians growing up was the image that my mom and dad grew up with, because that's the only one I I knew of, and that was a big butch woman who wore cowboy boots and cowboy hats and was rough and tumble, and what I mean, trying to be a man. And I guess I finally realized when I met some lesbians that it's not that way for the most part. That's a minority, but I don't think that lesbians are portrayed on TV hardly at all, really. And so that you don't have the role model, period.
Well,
and even all that is changing. We've got a lot of TV shows nowadays and movies that are portraying both gay men and women. The most recent little uproar is Roseanne Barr's attempt at a same-sex kiss on her show Roseanne. And I just heard they will be showing that episode shortly. I think that episode will transmit a more correct image of gay women to the general viewing audience than what they may have seen in the past.
you called that a same-sex kiss.
Yeah.
And you didn't call it a homosexual kiss.
Roseanne
What
is
is
not
the
homosexual. And during the show, her character, Roseanne, she is straight. Her sexuality is such that she didn't feel incredibly upset with a intimate kiss with one of her own sex. But she still realizes she is straight. And that's good. That's a message that needs to be transmitted more often. A same-sex kiss is not necessarily homosexual in nature.
That's really good. The definition there is like, I mean, well, usually the definition is like it's a homosexual act. And the difference is maybe it's not so much a homosexual act as it is a same-sex act. I hadn't really even thought of that. That's a really interesting definition. You seem to be very open about your lifestyle. Has there been any repercussions, or have you had any problems or anything like that?
That's something that I think everybody dreads when they begin to come out. They think, oh, what's going to happen to me? I'm going to get beat up. My friends are all going to drop me, and that's not happened to either one of us, I don't think. I've had extremely positive reactions from all my friends. I've never had anyone try to beat me up or call me names or anything like that. So it's been a very positive thing for me with my interactions with people.
Have you known anybody that's been beat up for being openly gay?
I have met a few. And it's very sad that they were, and I do feel for them, but I also feel that they put themselves in a situation where it was more likely to happen. Most gay and lesbians have not been physically assaulted for it. Verbally, yes, at some point. But verbal attacks are a lot easier to handle.
Well, a lot of people might argue that, well, that's the same argument used for like rapes, that they say, well, the woman, it's said like, well, the woman put herself in the wrong position where she had that possibility, and then the women's community says that's not the right way to look at it.
Well,
but
a better way to look at that similarity is what, say, on-campus public safety advises to young women in college. Don't go to the library alone at night. Ask somebody to go with you, a close male friend or another female, simply because by going alone to the library, you are putting yourself
at risk.
Yeah. Gay men stumbling out of a bar at 2 in the morning, walking alone to the car, are putting themselves at risk. If nothing else, make sure there's a whole group leaving or something.
Or at least somebody else I can run and call the police.
Yeah.
Oh, I shouldn't make light of that subject, but it's just, there's, with the bias crime ordinance and everything not passing, I kind of wonder, there was a lot of uproar about whether or not there would be more attacks on gay people or not, and apparently, no, you haven't heard of any?
Well,
or?
I don't think most people who dislike gays will stop at verbal attacks because it's not worth their energy to physically attack anybody.
Well, plus they can get in trouble. I mean,
Yeah.
people do press charges, and and call the police. To each of you, I'd kind of like to ask you, how does it feel right now, being in this particular day and age, to have your particular sexual identification, or however you want to call it, orientation? I'm not even sure of that particular grammatical definition there anymore. And what do you hope to see happen in the future? What are your hopes and dreams for the future? Either one, lead off.
Okay. In one word, I could say it feels powerful. The original giddiness of coming out has worn off, but I still feel like a more powerful person. Coming out tends to reaffirm and build your own self-esteem, for one. And second, when you come out to a close friend and they say, "Oh, I think that's great," it's empowering. And that's what I experience most, is just happiness and finally knowing who I am.
And for the future?
And for the future, I think as our generation grows up, people will care less and less what your orientation is. And after a while, I hope it becomes a non-issue, but we may not see that for a century yet. But we could see it in a couple decades. Hard to say.
What about you, Paula?
Well, basically, Cris took the words right out of my mouth.
Oh, you put
Shame
them
on
back.
you, Cris. I think that the best thing about coming out is actually being true to yourself, because people live with themselves lying for many years, and it just feels so terrible. I mean, I can handle when someone else lies to me, but I can't handle it when I lie to myself about anything. And I think that's the way most people feel when they come out. They think, oh, what a sense of relief, I don't have to lie to myself anymore. And I think that for some reason it's not nearly as hard and difficult as I thought it might be. For the future, Cris just kind of said it for me. I think that once our generation gets in power, and
well, it sounds like you have an agenda.
hate to say that, but I just think that people in our generation are a little bit more tolerant, and the issues won't be so drastic as they are today, even though they've gotten a lot better, especially in the last 10 years.
What about like one single thing that you think should come about by the time, say, you're 50? Not even a while ago?
I hope the amount of teenage suicides that are based on sexuality decrease. I think that's probably the most important thing.
That's good. What about you?
I'd like to see less of this self-segregation. Our community, at least right now, tends to want to segregate itself, find its own. They need to find safe spaces in which they can talk without being harassed and all, but they tend to just gather their friends around them and never deal with heterosexual society again if they can help it. And I think it'll take work on our part and all of society's.
Well, that's good. A little bit more about GALA. Are there any planned activities coming up for GALA? And what's going on? Why don't you tell us?
Well, this week we're having a members-only movie party, and we're showing Harold and Maude and Torch Song Trilogy, just because they're favorite movies of ours. We're going to order out pizza and just be bums and not do homework for a while. And then later on in the semester, we will probably have an interfraternity council panel, so that the fraternities can find out who we are.
Okay. And your next actual meeting is when?
It's going to be Monday.
Next Monday?
Yeah, well,
yeah, it goes every Monday?
Well, after spring break, we will be meeting on Thursdays at 6:30. The room may have changed by then, so I don't know where yet.
Okay.
But 6:30 on
But they can call the
Thursdays.
number and get information
Right.
on that. Okay, great. And I'd like to thank my guests, Cris Dopher and Paula Moore, for talking about GALA. We got a little bit of business to wrap up before the end of the show. We are still running a logo contest, and so if you have any artistic ability or think you do, or if somebody else says you do, or even if you just want to send an idea in, that's great, because we need a logo and some idea of a representation of this gay life. So however that seems to strike you, why don't you send it in. And our telephone number and our address is going to be up on the screen. The number is 888-6927, and then there's the address there, P.O. Box 1434, Springfield, Missouri 65801. And basically, we'd like to have you join us for next week too, and maybe possibly by then we'll be able to show you some of the things that come in on the logo contest. And let's see. Oh yes, and if you're a business that would like to sponsor a show, call that same number or contact us at the address, and we'll be sure and give you some information, because we would like some local sponsors. Or if you just want to give us some information, we also need to know if there's something you would like to see particularly on this show, This Gay Life, and that would help us out tremendously, because we're looking for a lot of feedback from the entire community, not just the gay community, because being in a gay community affects not just the individuals within that smaller community. It affects us all, and because we're all consumers, we're all out there doing stuff, and in our daily lives we have jobs and everything like that. So we need to hear from you. If there's something you find particularly interesting, let us know. And don't forget, if you have an idea for the contest, send that in. And let's see. Once again, if you'd like to go over the GALA information of when the meetings are, what time, you don't have the actual building yet. Of when
we
it's gonna
currently
be
have a meeting room, but it will be changing. Meetings are Thursdays, 6:30.
6:30. Is that every Thursday?
Every
Or is
Thursday.
that going to be, okay, every Thursday?
Unless classes don't meet, in which case meetings don't meet either.
Okay, so they actually take holidays with their meetings. That's interesting. Okay, and can you just give me the number one more time?
836-4795.
836-4795. If you need some information on GALA. And let's see, trying to wrap up here, trying to make sure I get all the information about the businesses and stuff like that, and the logo contest. And we haven't really figured out exactly what the next show is going to be, but I hope you'll join us. And if you can help us out by maybe letting us know what you'd like to see on the show, make sure you send some information to that address that we showed you. And let's see, and the logo contest. Let's see, everything else. I guess I just got to wrap up here and thank my guests, Cris Dopher, Paula Moore, and I'm Cris Devon, and thank you for joining us with This Gay Life. Remember, tune in next time, This Gay Life.